If the back will turn on the cameras. They haven't got it on yet, but we'll tell them. We're gonna have the invocation by me, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Firster, then we'll have roll call. Everybody please stand. Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight to ask you to have your blessings among us as we go about our daily and our weekly business for the city of Ocoee. We ask that you watch out over all of us and the citizens as we try to strive to make things better for our city. We ask you to watch out as we're still trying to get through this COVID and make sure that everybody is safe and sound. Also, we want to thank our first responders, both sides, the police and fire, as they do their jobs every day through all this strife, and we keep moving forward. Once again, thank you for your heavenly advice. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Brinson?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson?
Present.
Mayor Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Firstner?
Here.
Commissioner Oliver?
Here.
All right, first thing first, presentations and proclamations. I have a proclamation here for the Shepherd's Hope, and we have that wonderful Pam Gould here. It's also our school board member and our representative from Shepherd's Hope. Let me read this proclamation, and then we'll call you up, okay? Whereas 2022 marks the 25th anniversary of Shepherd's Hope, which provides access to quality health care in our community. And whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize the work that was started by a team of clinical and non-clinical volunteers led by Dr. William S. Barnes, then pastor of St. Luke's United Methodist Church in Windermere. And whereas the first health center opened at the Westside Tech campus of Orange Technical College on February 14, 1997. And whereas Shepherd's Hope has grown to 5 medical health facilities in Orange and Seminole counties to serve uninsured neighbors facing medical crisis. And whereas Shepherd's Hope built and opened its first purpose-built health center and central office in Winter Garden in 2019. And whereas volunteer physicians, nurses, other licensed healthcare professionals, and general volunteers continue to be the primary caregiving team at each facility, providing whole person care and free health services for children and adults. And whereas Shepherd's Hope has provided over 330,000 free patient visits and medical services to those in need in our community since 1997. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Commission of the City of Ocoee does hereby proclaim 2022 as the 25th anniversary for Shepherd's Hope for all its work in our community, and I urge all citizens to join in celebrating this worthwhile organization. In witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Ocoee, Florida, to be fixed this first day of March, 2022. I'm gonna call you up front, and you can say a couple words, and then we'll let all commissioners come down and we'll get a picture.
Yes, you want pictures?
You wanna come up here and, you wanna say anything?
I would. Here.
Yes, ma'am. Either one.
Well, first of all, thank you. And Ocoee and of course Health Central, which was the very first hospital partner that Shepherd's Hope has ever had in order to give that free care. We continue to work extremely closely with Health Central to ensure people don't misuse the emergency room, but also when they absolutely need the emergency room but have nowhere to go for their follow-up care, they're referred to us. And we continue to hold that relationship very near and dear to our hearts, and it's absolutely vitally essential in delivering the full scope of care that we do. Our sweet spot is the acute and specialty care. So if you are listening to this and you have lost your position and found yourself uninsured, please call us. Go to our website, shepherdshope.org. We have discovered a lot of people who didn't know where to go through this pandemic when life got turned upside down. So thank you very much, Mayor and Commissioners, for your ongoing support of the services we provide to all of West Orange County. Our roots are here in West Orange County, but now in the whole Central Florida area, and it couldn't have happened without partnerships like this. So thank you very much.
Won't you,
All right,
I'll let you
pictures.
come down and let's get a picture.
All right, let's get pictures. Even better. Even better on the official picture. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Good night, thank you. What about, all right, we're gonna move the next item to item number 11, so let's do the staff reports.
Mayor, the only thing I have is just to note that you do have full color illustrations in front of each of you, and that's for your consideration on item number 10.
Okay. I have one here for Miss Patty Leroy. I can't read. Leroy. Come on down. That's all right.
Mayor and Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Patty Leroy. I'm the president of the Women's Club of Ocoee. The Women's Club, as well as Ocoee, has suffered through the pandemic and some disarray, and we are now making a comeback. I'm here tonight to make hopefully a sponsorship in-kind donation to the city for use of the club and the parking area for the duration of the music festival. We are here to support that it is finally coming back. We are coming back. We've had a lot of struggles, pandemic, scheduling and all that, and it's happening now, and we would like to make this offer and hopefully get our name in something.
Oh, well, I'll take care of that. I appreciate it very much. It's a great thing that the Women's Club's been there a long time. I don't know the exact years, but I know it's been.
It's 94.
I think my mother-in-law was one of the charter members back in the day, so, and I think it's a big part of the city that partners with us and everything that goes on, so we appreciate that. We appreciate your thought process of helping us out. So it's April the 8th and 9th. We will truly make sure it looks like it does when we get through. We
Thank
really appreciate it. Anybody else have any comments? I know, I just thank you very much. We appreciate it. And I will make sure it gets on the thing that you doing that.
Thank you. Just let
Yes.
me know where you want the logo to go, and we'll get it
All right.
to whoever it needs to get to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Very well done.
Thank you.
All right, that's all the public comments in this section. We'll go to consent agenda.
I just want to make one comment.
Okay.
I'm not pulling anything, I just want to make a
No,
comment.
okay.
On item number 3, I would just like to clarify that this agenda item was only that we support the placement of the surtax referendum on the November 8th countywide ballot for consideration by the voters of Orange County. So this is not saying that we're in support or we reject it. We're just saying at this point that we are supporting putting it on the referendum, on the November 8th ballot for the voters to make a decision. Just want to clarify that.
That it? Okay.
That's it, thank you.
All right. All right, anybody else? If not, I need a motion.
Make a motion?
Motion made by Commissioner Wilson. Do I hear a second?
Second it?
Oh, did you second it?
Yes, sir.
Seconded by Commissioner Oliver. No more comments? We'll vote. Motion carries unanimously. All right, first reading of ordinances, none. Second reading of ordinances, none. Public hearing, none. Moving right along. We're gonna go over here to number 10 on regular agenda. Approval for staff to accept an unsolicited letter of intent, LOI, from 2B Plat Platinum LP for 2 city-owned parcels identified as 15 South Kissimmee Avenue and 214 West McKee Street. Development Services Director Rumer.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a regular item, so I'll be giving a presentation and taking questions if you have any. Again, this is a letter of intent to purchase property. The city doesn't have a specific list of properties we're looking to unload, and we work with people or we get requests from time to time. And this one before you is for 2 parcels located in our downtown core. The address is 15 South Kissimmee, and there's a second parcel which has frontage on West McKee Street. They were purchased in 2014 and presently contain 3 buildings, 2 office buildings, one which is uninhabitable, one which houses some files and is basically uninhabitable, and then a storage building in the back. And since that time, we purchased the property. It wasn't the reason, because we hadn't done the downtown master plan until 2017, but you looked at the property as a location for land we own for off-site stormwater for the Taylor Street reconstruction, which will involve some of Kissimmee Avenue. We have to move it to the west a little bit away from the railroad right away. And this property is right there on the corner, as you can see. This is McKee Street running through with our downtown and Taylor Street. So we'll have a street resurfacing project. The plans are at about 90% to bring Kissimmee this way and then reconstruct Taylor Street as well. What I'm highlighting on this is sort of at the 90%, it's not an exact legal description base, but there's a need. We have the future stormwater pond on the site, and you can see and shaded back the 2 existing buildings, and then there's one where the pond is. But we are going to need from this parcel some right-of-way on the east side to move the road over, and then we have a pond, and we have the bank a pond, and we're looking at that pond size. And so the proposal, letter of intent saying, we recognize what's going on in the downtown. We want to be a part of this. We want to develop this parcel. We're willing to jump in and work with you guys while you're doing whatever you need for land and construction easements. And we want to purchase the property and build a project that is similar to what we designed here. The building in these elevations you have are a little bit larger. We were using this as a concept for St. Johns River Water Management District. We proposed all the stormwater underground, so it'll be along, this view is what we expect to remain, and you'll have that building facade on the corner. So as part of this letter of intent, they said, we understand first that we're not gonna get the full 1+ acres, we'll get the remnant. We're willing to buy that remnant now, as well as we'll do 2 things. We will commit as a deed restriction, sort of committing to this type of an architectural 2-story mixed-use building. And then additionally, we'll commit to a provision where if for some reason they sell it and make more than the proceeds, we get money back. And so this is a unique opportunity because it allows you have us go to, direct us to get to contract, and they'll do contract and due diligence, but it allows that development process to sort of be in motion while the road's being built. Then the road's done, they know what land they have, and they can get to a building, which will be a nice sort of end cap on McKee Street to our city hall, and the adjacent building, VMG, will be constructing in a couple months. And so this is a way, you're just instructing us to go to contract, the city attorney to write up a contract. We'll bring that contract back before you all for approval, and I'm available for any questions.
All right. Do we have anybody up on the dais got any questions? Anybody? We need a motion.
Yeah, this is a regular item, so we can take comments from you all. It's not a public hearing, but you have a presentation, you can ask questions, and let's just take a vote.
I just have one quick question. Again, the purchase and or sale of any property with the city involved, are we going to get an appraisal on this? Will there be appraisal done, or?
Yeah, Commissioner, we have the appraisal from when we purchased this in 2014, which, as I disclosed, was during the high point of the market. And that was for the full acreage and 3 buildings, which at the time were in a little bit better shape than they are now. We couldn't do an appraisal because those buildings are all gonna be torn down. And the vacant land, we don't have the amount of square feet of vacant land. So we know that for the full acreage in the buildings, the price of $525, we expect, if you can see on the site plan, it's just about half. What we're gonna work with them is, in what we're doing to make the project, the roadway project, less expensive, we weren't doing structured ponds. So we'll work with them to maybe do a structure on the side of the pond to hold more volume, make that pond a little bit smaller, but we don't know the acreage we're gonna be selling. That'll all be worked out when we get to the contract. We'll know the acreage, which will be, probably a third, 2/3 less, maybe close to a half of what we purchased it for with buildings, but it'll be without buildings when they receive it.
There's a plan also for the purchaser to invest in some infrastructure as well. That correct?
Yes,
Did I
that's where
read
we
that?
will be working with them the benefit is we can then utilize this pond as a joint pond. And so to make that small parcel developable, if we structure the pond, say, on 2-3 sides, now we can hold more volume and capture some of that stormwater. Because this site is outside of our drainage area for the new master pond we're building across the road. It's not it's on the other east side of the railroad. So we're not able to send stormwater there. So this provides an opportunity to provide stormwater and get a development, and a very specific type of development on that parcel.
Would that make way for future development as far as having that pond, that stormwater, or that pond? Would it actually enhance the other areas for drainage, or allow us to develop other parcels?
Right. It's allowing us to do our road project without having to, the Taylor Street road project and part of this Kissimmee, without having to purchase off-site property. So we're gonna get to utilize the land for what we need, and then we're gonna have this benefit of, we're gonna get a good sale price for it and a development. We're gonna know that ahead of time.
What would be the cost as far as, it sounds like a joint venture as far as we're selling the property to them for $300,000, even though we paid $500 for it, but I understand. They're only gonna end up with about a quarter, an acre, 3/4 acres, right?
Between 2/3 and a half, yes.
2/3 and a half
Yes.
acres. But they're also going to make an investment of additional funding to help with the actual drainage for the area. Do you have a dollar figure that they're going to invest on top of $300,000 to a joint venture with us on that
Right.
project?
Not yet. Perhaps when we bring this back for the contract, because it's, before you have the LOI to spend the money and the time, we can only go so far until we get the direction to move forward.
Okay.
So we would look to bring that back as an aspect of the contract, to say, this is a good deal, let's go to contract.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Anybody else have any comments? This is one of the corners, when we bought this property a few years ago, is what the intention was, is either bringing in St. John's Water Management or bringing in some other business that'll come in there and develop that corner where we draw the economic development out of it. So I think it'll be a great project. We've been waiting a while on that, so we appreciate somebody wanting to take out that and start that process. Anybody else? If not, I need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Commissioner Oliver for approval for the staff to accept an unsolicited letter of intent from 2B Platinum. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Firstner. Any more comments? No more comments, let's vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, so number 11, approval for, this is Assistant City Manager Craig Shatter. Approval for proposed ARPA project list.
Good evening, mayors and members of the commission. Craig Shatter, Assistant City Manager. We have two items relating to this tonight. The first will be a presentation. As we have discussed before at the commission, the city was allocated $24,172,600 and something from the American Rescue Plan Act, which is a federal program that provided funding for all local governments. And the City Commission has retained the services of Government Services Group, who has prepared a presentation and overview, and then we have a project list that is a culmination of a workshop with internal staff to describe infrastructure that was necessary and recommended for expenditure of these funds. So I'm going to turn it over to Government Services Group for the presentation, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions about the project list.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having us tonight. My name is Joseph Sheets. I'm a senior consultant with Government Services Group. I'm honored to be here to assist the city of Ocoee with the American Rescue Plan, as well as to present before the commission here. The American Rescue Plan Act, we're going to talk about a few things. On this agenda, we have initially just a broad overview of the American Rescue Plan, what it is, what it touches, what it can affect. We'll go in an overview of not just the analysis process that we undertook with the projects, but kind of pull back the curtain a little bit and the project selection process. We'll talk about the prioritization of the projects themselves and the selection, the importance and investment of water infrastructure, and a little bit more just in general of what some other cities, counties, government entities are doing with their funds. Talk about the next steps in this process, and we'll wrap up and we can answer questions. The American Rescue Plan was an unprecedented $1.9 trillion economic stimulus bill that was passed to address the direct economic impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic in March of 2021. This bill touched almost every aspect of the American economy, from transportation, aviation, the local economies, to agriculture, but where we see $365 billion of funds being administered directly to the state and local governments was in what we call the State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. Now, unlike most other federal programs, these funds were allocated directly to the cities, the counties, the tribal nations, the territories, whereas most other federal programs, as we know, we have to competitively bid for this money. So with direct allocations of these funds, of which the city of Ocoee got $24.17 million, with this direct allocation also comes lots of restrictions. So there's very specific guidelines for the eligible uses, and these guidelines are meant to direct these funds to where the Treasury felt that they can have the most impact, where they can have a sustained impact to help cities, counties, territories not just recover, but help build prosperity to the future. So within these eligible categories, you have support for public health expenditures, everything from vaccination initiatives to public health and safety staff, different community health care options, addressing the negative economic impacts, small business assistance programs, aid to impacted industries, public sector assistance, replacing lost public sector revenue. This was an area that initially it involves a rather convoluted calculation that must be undertaken to calculate the lost revenue due to the pandemic, and we saw there was little consistency across the board from cities to counties and how this was done. So when the Treasury issued the final rule or the final guidance for the American Rescue Plan, they changed the guidance to say, listen, instead of doing this calculation that, in my mind, Treasury didn't want to have to go and audit in the first place, that the cities and counties and government entities can select a standard $10 million allocation for that expenditure category. Now, that doesn't add anything to the overall allocation, but that means that they can select to just spend up to $10 million in that allocation, in that amount, no questions asked. There's no questions asked about how much revenue did you really lose. The next category would be premium pay for eligible workers and infrastructure improvements, wastewater and stormwater, clean drinking water, and then some some eligibility for broadband to underserved areas and middle and last mile projects. So the process that the city of Ocoee has been taking over the last many months, in December of 2021, after the city selected Government Services Group to assist with the American Rescue Plan funds usage, initiated some meetings, and over the course of the last several months, the city has met with internal stakeholders and Government Services Group regularly to discuss what is the best usage of these funds. So that begins with the city putting together a list of projects, identifying what projects from each department are the highest priority. What projects do we have that are not only a need, but could potentially not have this funding as immediately. We look at the American Rescue Plan as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have these additional funds to undergo projects that can have a sustained impact. So that $62 million list of capital projects that was identified then gets analyzed. I'll go over our risk analysis process a little bit on the next slide, but there's an analysis process where through this process we want to remain risk averse, because as we know with federal funds, yes, it's great to be able to spend the money. However, if you don't spend them in the right way, 10 years from now, the Treasury is going to come back and say, hey, you didn't spend that correctly. We're going to claw that back. We need those funds back. So if they're not spent correctly, then you might as well have not spent it at all. So a risk-averse approach was the most important for the city and for us as advisors. So analyzing for eligibility, potential compliance issues, risk of clawback, that led us to a short list of projects. So with the risk analysis process, one of the basic guidelines that we used was how eligible is this with the American Rescue Plan expenditure categories? It's a 437-page document. Well, how eligible would these projects be within those 437 pages? Can we find the language that says these are eligible? So if we can find the language explicitly, that's minimal risk, category of 1. Then it goes all the way 1 through 5. So 5 being really no eligibility found for the project, would not be recommended, to high risk, minimal relation to COVID, or unquantifiable. So in addition to the risk analysis based on the actual ARPA eligibility, we look at factors such as the actual financial impact. When we talk about likelihood versus impact of clawback, well, riskiness for compliance, well, yes, that's our likelihood of potential clawback, but impact would be the cost of that, the cost of those projects, the financial considerations. So that leads us to our initial list of projects. So as we see, we start with our revenue loss category, which for $10 million, what we've seen many cities, counties, government entities do, and this has been discussed through many of the large national organizations such as National Association of Counties, National League of Cities, as well as the Government Finance Officers Organization. One of the mechanisms that many of them have been using is taking a singular line item within the city budget, applying that $10 million revenue loss category towards that for provision of government services, and then when that $10 million is freed up within the general fund, using it towards projects that were initially identified for ARPA usage, however, now being able to administer those projects under city and state guidelines rather than federal guidelines. We can detail the potential projects under that category to help both the fire and police department as well. But for direct ARPA usage, it would be a $10 million line item for public safety salaries. We have a large focus on the water infrastructure, stormwater and wastewater. As we see with these, the various other projects, Fuller's Cross, the new lift station, water main replacements in Lakewood and Ruis, expanding electrical rooms and these stations, oxidation ditches, clarifiers 1 and 3 mechanical replacements, upgrading the existing reuse and transfer pump stations, new reclaimed storage tanks, transmission mains, reclaimed pumping facilities, and then finally administrative costs to help administer all of these projects. So the usage of these funds on water infrastructure has been a very common theme that we've seen, particularly throughout the state of Florida. There is typically a lack of funding for these very necessary infrastructure projects, particularly for growing communities such as Ocoee. So the use of these funds for infrastructure projects we've seen is one that can provide a more long-term benefit, as these components, this equipment, and these systems have a useful life that's decades, as opposed to short-term, reoccurring, but potentially already occurring expenditures. The Government Finance Officers Organization, on their initial review of the American Rescue Plan, said that the investment in this critical infrastructure is one of the best uses of the American Rescue Plan funds, because they target strategically important long-term assets that provide benefits to the entire community over many years. We also see that, according to the International County and City Managers Association, 84% of local government respondees said that this was the category they really wanted to spend their funds in. So we see the importance, not just at the local level, but as a consensus level with other governments, that these projects do. We know they have a long-term sustained impact. Not only do they directly affect the residents, they help produce jobs. Annually, according to the American Civil Society of Engineers, $84 billion a year needs to be spent on water infrastructure. In addition, if that number were met on a yearly basis, it would produce an additional $94 billion a year for domestic businesses and positive economic growth. And between the years 2027 and 2040, up to $402 billion per year in jobs, economic growth, and savings to cities and residents. So we see the importance of these projects, which is one of the reasons why the city wanted to focus much of their efforts on this necessity. Because the water infrastructure, it's many times we take it for granted, but it is a necessity, and we see that there is demonstrable return on investment for these projects as opposed to short-term endeavors. And one of the things that we've seen for many communities, and Ocoee has been the same, is that it's called the American Rescue Plan, right? So it's called the American Rescue Plan. However, many of these communities, they don't need to be rescued. Ocoee doesn't need to be rescued. Ocoee doesn't need rescuing. This plan is more of a plan to provide prosperity, a plan to provide sustained benefit for the city for many years in the future. And the length of time for the American Rescue Plan demonstrates that importance for long-term sustained benefit. Most of these federal programs, they have a 2 or 3 year life cycle. The American Rescue Plan has one that's a little bit longer. So today's March 1st. On December 31st, 2024, the city's ARP costs must be incurred, and then they must be expended by the end of 2026. Now, that is a longer-term project timeline. However, as we know, particularly with capital projects, from procurement to project closeout, that may end up, being, where action is necessary to begin these projects, if we want to ensure that the timelines are all kept. So the request is to, on March 1st, approve this spending plan in its current form and be able to move forward and begin the process to initiate these projects. And the sooner the city begins, the sooner we can see that return and that benefit to the community. So, thank you very much, and I'd love to answer any questions.
Ready? Craig, you have anything else to say before we start up here? All right, commissioners, comments? Anybody?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions here. So we're looking at the recommendation. Is it your recommendation to this commission that $10 million be used for salaries, and that's the best option? That looks like 42% of the $24 million that's coming our way. That seems like a huge chunk to go towards salaries for something that's ARPA. Is that your recommendation to this municipality?
So thank you for the question, Commissioner. So that $10 million expenditure is really a mechanism to free up those funds, that $10 million within the general fund, to then use that $10 million of general fund expenditures in a non-ARPA classification to then administer projects that we had identified for potential ARPA use, such as the shooting range and training facility for the police department, as well as potentially a new fire station. So while, according to what Treasury sees that gets reported as an ARPA expenditure, that $10 million will go towards those public safety salaries. Really, the impact of ARPA will be the projects made available by ARPA with that $10 million.
Okay, that was it?
Yes, sir. So, it's to answer your question, it really can be spent on any singular line item within the city budget. And conversations with the staff, that was the line item that was recommended, and we've seen that utilized in other communities as well. Again, once those funds are freed up in the general fund, the federal requirements, the federal red tape for those other projects will not apply, and it will provide the city with cost savings, as well as expediting procurement processes and be able to shorten the project timelines.
Okay, and that's, one of my concerns is just that, because I know you mentioned clawback, and that's something that when or if should the city of Ocoee get audited behind the opera funds that was distributed to us, we want to make sure that everything we're doing is above board and correct. And so I don't know if there's any language in that 400 some odd page document you mentioned that we could do it in this manner in which you said, because the manner in which you said actually makes sense to me. It is actually savvy, if you allow me to use that word. But I want to make sure that 3 years from now they're not coming back and say, hey, you know what, you guys weren't supposed to do it that way. So I want to make sure that because you're the professionals and you're advising us what's the best avenue of approach, right?
So I'm actually going to pass it over to our Senior Vice President, Dave Jahosky, to speak more on the audit implications.
Man, I thought you was Dave. Let me write that.
No, that's Joseph.
Okay,
Commissioner Hines,
that's
good evening,
Joseph.
Dave Jahosky. That issue's actually come up several times before. So what Treasury has allowed local governments to do is to use the revenue replacement as a flexible tool to fund general government services that typically would not be allowed to be funded the way that the act is actually written. So if you remember, when the CARES Act first came out and the funds went directly to the county, like Orange County, there was an administrative convenience provision that was allowed within that act. And what the act allowed for was for local governments to claim public safety personnel costs, and it was presumed to be considered for fighting the pandemic, and what that allowed the local governments to do was to get the programs that were most needed to serve the citizens, but to free up some of the administrative requirements of how the money was to be spent. We have, and we do work with outside legal counsel. We are not attorneys. We don't provide legal advice. But this specific question did come up with one of our clients in South Florida, where the attorneys actually wrote a legal opinion to the city stipulating that the use of the funds to use the administrative convenience provision of the revenue replacement was an allowable use. And the only real restriction to the use of the funds is that you had to show a dollar for dollar correlation between what line items you spent the money on and how it was then being reported to the U.S. Treasury. So in this example, we were using and proposing to use public safety salary dollars because it's a large enough of a line of expense to make it, from a reporting standpoint, easier to do so. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, it causes other questions, but it does answer my question. Because when I look at this, and believe me, I truly understand. Without question, I understand. But I'm looking at this, and I'm really mindful of clawback. I am super duper mindful of clawback. And so when you tell me that attorneys from other municipalities, other clients of yours, have actually written opinions on this, I don't know if our attorney has had the opportunity to look over this. And I mean, that's something that troubles me, because normally you say, well, you guys are good, but he actually took the time to write an opinion.
This city specifically requested the opinion as like an insurance policy, which other counties did the same thing during the CARES Act administration. So just from some background, from my personal background, I've been with GSG firm for about 5 years now. Prior to this, I led KPMG's state and local government regulatory compliance practice in the Southeast U.S. So my experience going with 2 CFR and the predecessor, OMB 87, goes back almost 28 years now. I am much older than I look. I thank my mother every day for my youthful look.
Me too.
And absolutely. And but our goal is, what we focus on managing risk while looking to maximize the return back to the city. So the program, we work with legal counsel typically because they help provide the legal framework, as well as understanding the programmatic framework and the financial framework. We also work with external auditors frequently to understand what their requirements and what they're looking at, so that the program that we design takes those 3 components in mind while we look to best provide the services to you to minimize the potential clawback, which is one of the reasons why we go through that risk analysis, is to not recommend the ones that we feel do not meet the eligibility criteria.
Okay. Just a couple more questions.
Sure.
Kind of sticky. Now, in managing these federal dollars, are there requirements in there for minority and women business enterprises to be incorporated into this distribution or implementation of the program?
In the act itself, no, there's not.
Okay. And the last question I had is, I'm looking at $1.7 million of this ARPA fund that's coming to the city, going to be used for administrative fees. What do we get for that?
Well, that all is not ours for us and for our contract also, and I would refer to the assistant city manager, but part of that is also the internal cost for the city's time and expense. Actually, the 1.7 million is actually less than what the cap is. The cap allows for up to 10% for the city to claim for administrative expenses. So also being a prior government person, understanding that the more money you take out, you use on admin, the less you have on program dollars. So that's one of the other things that we try to manage from a fiduciary responsibility. It's also really an estimate, because we're trying to look out for 5 years. Actually, it's really going to go beyond 2026, it really carries you through, I think our contract goes through March of 2026, which would allow for the closeout provision. So it's actually over a 5-year period, at least the way that our contract is written. It's based on an estimate not to exceed. It's not a guarantee to us, so we only get paid for the services that we provide.
That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Wilson?
I'm pleased to see the infrastructure. It seems as though the constant conversation here with us every meeting is infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. So again, I'm looking at that as a win for us. So I don't have a problem. I see the majority of the money is being spent on the infrastructure. So again, some of these are 20-year-old equipment that we're replacing, which if we don't replace it with this, we're gonna replace it with tax dollars. And you know what that means? The military. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Commissioner Forstner?
Yeah, I look at this as an incredible windfall to the city and all the cities that are involved. The infrastructure is one of those things that's easily overlooked, like Commissioner Wilson said. It's usually funded through tax dollars, and it's something that no one really wants to even talk about. So this is beautiful that that's the prime focus of this grant. It's also good that 10 million is being carved out for the other programs and efforts in the city that they can benefit from it too. Because we have had projects like the two that you've mentioned that have been languishing on the long-range plan for a while, and the funding just wasn't there. So this is gonna provide a nice boost to get those things pushed up to the forefront. We can address those also. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Forstner. Commissioner Oliver?
The line item here identifies lost revenue allowance. It'll be used to partially cover the cost for public safety salaries. So this is, the way you explained it, this is strictly the $10 million, which is about a little 40%, is for salaries for fiscal year 21 and 22. This is what we're gonna be using this $10 million for. So I'm reading this verbatim, so is that what this is gonna be used for?
That is what the direct ARPA funds will be used for, and that's what will be reported to Treasury. However, once the $10 million of general fund expenditures that would normally go towards that money gets freed up, I know there will be some budgetary mechanisms that need to go through, like an appropriation.
Yeah, plus, when it comes back, when you receive the funds back into the city, it will be recognized as unrestricted general revenue. And when, as Joseph was saying before, when that money comes back in, it could then be used for purposes such as the other projects that you had mentioned. One of the other things that has been built into this, at least I think from the administrative cost perspective, is also there's funds in there for potential cost overruns, because one of the things that we're seeing right now, based on other clients that we're working with, is that estimates for projects are coming in much higher than what the estimates that have been prepared are, mainly for two reasons. One, because everyone knows there's significant supply chain issues, and two, there's also issues that starting April 1st, you're going to essentially be competing with 67 counties and the other 400 cities in the state of Florida, all looking for the same resources to provide the same services. So what the $10 million does is think of it this way, it's kind of like the standard deduction on your tax return. You can go through and you can itemize, and you can go through the analysis of computing the actual revenue loss, but the requirement's still the same. You still have to show what you're using it for. It could be for salaries, it could be for a project. It's not specified in the act. The act, though, does provide greater flexibility to the city and to the council from a policy standpoint on how you can then reuse those funds. You're reporting it to Treasury under one category, but you're actually able to use the expense slightly differently.
If I may, just to clarify a little further, this $10 million line item is taking the standard deduction, as Mr. Jahoski said, for loss, because the final rulemaking from ARPA that came down allows local governments to do that, like they had said, recognizing the complications that many local governments had complained about with calculating actual losses. So taking that standard $10 million deduction, which is what we're recommending, frees up other revenue that would otherwise be used in our budget to pay for those salaries. And it puts it into another, and basically you've created a pot that's subject to our purchasing rules and our and state rules. And what ARPA is reported to is exactly what will have happened. That 10 million will go straight to public safety salaries. It just, as they were explaining, we have 10 million then in, for lack of a better term, unrestricted funds that we can use for projects that don't necessarily fit into one of those buckets that were defined as part of the ARPA program and rulemaking.
You identified five buckets and the subcategories within those buckets. And again, I'm still kind of on the fence about the lost revenue and how we're going to use it, but I think I understand how you're going to do it. The free up additional funds that's not included in those 5 buckets. You can expand outside of that with the extra money. I get that. Again, we're using a large chunk of money for that, 42%, 41%, something like that, 41 point some odd percent of that. That's a large chunk. And that's fine, that's okay. But I have a couple other questions. Has the city spent, our spending plan for the first tranche of the ARPA funds, has it been solidified yet?
So the spending plan that's been proposed is what you see right now.
So it has not been solidified?
No, this is the spending, any plan for this use of funds would come before the commission for approval.
All right.
So
Has there been like a workshop planned to get input from the commission? That going to be planned to get any input from us as to how these funds are going to be distributed to the commission, or to the commission, but to distribute it for different projects?
The commission can request a workshop. They went over the timeline with you. GSG went over the timeline with you. The project list that's before you tonight is the recommended expenditure of both tranches of funding from ARPA. The first tranche has been received and we have it. We expect the second to drop later this summer. So this project list is what we are recommending that was just presented to you. The commission can always request a more detailed workshop. In creation of this list, the city's departments have gone through the capital improvements plan quite heavily, and as they'd mentioned, created a project list that was almost $62 million, and then those projects were then ranked. Prior to the final rulemaking, which allowed us the option of taking the $10 million deduction, we had a much bigger project list, but as we just explained, it gives you more options as part of your traditional budget process for that 10 million, and that's why we're recommending it. But those utilities projects that are on the list for recommendation have been vetted through several internal processes and are the highest ranked projects that we would professionally recommend to you. So, you know, the commission could certainly request more information. That would delay the timeline, but I want to make it very clear that this is our recommended project list.
So therefore, the answer to that question is no.
Correct.
Okay, so we have not been approached about how these funds should be spent, how this project list should be laid out for the citizens, or for the city. And I understand infrastructure is very important. And I know it's a high priority item. I get that, the infrastructure piece of that. And I certainly understand what you're doing with the lost revenue. I get that as well. But if there is no input from the commission that represents the people, then that seems to be a little problematic to me. It just seems to be kind of impractical when there's funds that come from the federal government that is allocated for the city, which is ultimately for the citizens, but their representation doesn't get any say-so in how these projects are laid out, then that seems to be a little problematic.
That's what we're doing right now, Commissioner.
Well,
The list is in front of you. You can have this discussion with your fellow commissioners if there's something you all would like to change. We had to get to a point to come up with a recommended list. Now, at this point, you've heard these gentlemen say we've got 67 counties and 411 cities out there vying to use this money and start these projects too. These are projects that we will be spending tax money and utility dollars on within the next 10 years. So we can either use this for projects we're telling you we will need to spend in the next 10 years, and we can go and we can do that. We could have a workshop, and we could delay this another month or two. But these are projects that actually have to be done. And this is the first time you're seeing them. That's correct. We had to come and give you recommendations. It wouldn't have made sense to have a workshop and just say, what do we want to spend this money on? We want you to know what the needs are. And the needs are basically in the utilities department. And we have a couple other needs we've been talking about for years that we haven't been able to fund. And basically, we can use that $10 million for the salary replacement to fund the shooting range and the fire station that we've been trying to fund for several years. So if you look at all these are all definitely needed projects. They've been ranked by staff, and there might be some other things, some tweaks you want to do to it, but we're saying these are very urgently needed water and wastewater projects. And if you don't want to go ahead with using that money, the $10 million for police and fire stations, that's fine. You'll be doing that when we reallocate the extra funding at the budget meeting. So you don't have to make the decision on those two right now. But we're putting this in front of you. You tell us what you want to do.
all right, well, again, just kind of going back to your comments 2 meetings ago, that there will be a workshop that will be conducted for the commission to discuss these projects. That never happened. So that's why I'm asking about the workshop. Just as you stated before, these projects have to be done. So if this money just disappears, we never get this money, this still has to be done.
Correct.
So
And I never mentioned a workshop. I said we would be having this come at the first meeting to present to you. So this is what we do with most items. We bring this forward, we show it to you. If you would like to have a workshop, that's fine. You can have a workshop. But we have to put something together and bring it forward to you, and you all decide at this point what you want to do.
Okay.
Well, go ahead, Commissioner, and read out your comments, and then we'll discuss.
All right.
Finish.
So, again, I see a lack of communication between staff and commission as far as.
I don't see that at all. That's not true, Commissioner. Please don't say that.
Well,
We've been telling you this is coming forth. We've been telling you we've had internal meetings to come up with these projects. We've done that. We're putting them in front of you. Now it's your turn. You see the projects. Feel free to tell us what you want to do.
Okay, so these projects are just recommendations?
This is a
Is that what we're saying?
recommendation.
These are
Yeah,
recommendations.
this requires the commission approval to use this as the accepted project list.
Okay.
And these are our recommendations, like we do everything that we bring in front of you. We always bring this stuff in front of you. We give you recommendations. Typically, you don't ask for a workshop. You have the right to do that at any time. But what you have is a professional study by the city staff, saying this is the projects that we recommend for you to do. Now, it's up to you five to do what you want to do at this point.
What I'm getting at is the fact that I don't see anything for social services at all. I mean, not even 1% of this money for any kind of social services. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. I wrote a letter to the commission. I have a letter for each and every one of you guys that I need to put this letter to be put into public record. This letter is very concerning to me because, again, there was no input from the commission except for at a commission meeting. We should have actually been at a workshop to be able to come to a consensus as to what these buckets look like and how we want to allocate these funds and then bring it forward to the commission. It didn't happen that way. We're doing this right here, right now, at a commission meeting.
I don't
And
recall
it's
you
fine.
requesting that. We could have done that if you had requested
Well,
that,
well,
Commissioner.
Well, I'm only going on what you said. I can go back to the
That's
record and
not
just show you show you exactly what you said. You said a workshop. I didn't bring it out of nowhere. That didn't just come up. I didn't just bring it up. I just said a workshop.
Let's,
I'll bring that
I
information
think
to you.
possibly back in November or December last year, when we weren't sure exactly the procedure, we said something like we could have a workshop if that's something that you want. If that, we're bringing it forth to you. If you want to have a workshop, propose a workshop. We can do that.
Excuse me just a
That's
second.
fine.
Let's finish your points. And finish your points, and then we'll bring it up and discuss
what
that
I'm
with the
doing.
commissioners.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
All right, finish them, then we won't go back and forth.
Well,
Then we can ask if we want to do that or not do that.
okay.
Okay.
I'm writing a letter dated March 1st to the Honorable Ocoee City Commission. It's with a sense of goodwill and hope that I write this letter. We live in very challenging and transitional times, so much that we often miss opportunities to appreciate the people in the city that we love so dearly. After careful review of the proposed American Recovery Rescue Plan Act, the project list, I must say that I was extremely disappointed when I did not see any allocations for social services. Although the proposed projects we are much needed, and it's actually it's on high on our priority list. I contend that the small percentage of these funds could be used in one of the following ways. We got small business match grants, women-owned and operated businesses in the city, relief for small businesses in West Oaks Mall, attracting small business-based businesses, supporting local and nonprofit organizations, which is also part of those buckets. School-based programs such as PTA and SAC meetings, school-based programs such as tutoring, reading, and math programs, extracurricular activities for middle and high school, after-school programs for youth programs, local programs that support the education of civics, youth sports programs, social services, help with rent, help with homeless, also help with utility bills. Although these are just a few opportunities, there are many more that could be mentioned. We as elected officials should be duty bound to urge our staff who serve at our convenience to use a percentage of these funds in some type of social service capacity. So again, I wrote this letter, and again, I want, you can have a copy of the letter there. Please give her a copy of the letter. Here's a copy of the letter for everybody else. So you can have a copy of this letter here. But I think it is extremely important that we look at, you mentioned a timeline from 2027 to 2040 that's going to benefit the city in the form of billions of dollars, and I think that's great. I get that. But just as the young lady here put it, from the Women's Club, they struggled through COVID. And you said that Ocoee does not need rescuing. Well, you know, maybe the city doesn't need rescuing, but there are people that live in our city that could use some help. There are people in our city that's struggling with rent and utilities, that's struggling every single day to make ends meet. So therefore, we have an opportunity right here, and it's in the buckets. I've read some, actually not all of it. It is a large document. I've read a lot of that document over the past few months, and there are buckets in there that will actually cover social services. And I'm just really upset when I don't see not even 1% of that money going towards social services. And you mentioned other cities. Yes, so I've actually taken the liberty to contact other cities and find out what they're doing. They have rent assistance programs, utility assistance programs, programs to actually attract small businesses, matching grant programs to attract businesses into their city. So there's lots of things that we can do besides just infrastructure or spending 42% of this money for lost salaries. So my thing is this. We need to start looking at the immediate impact that we can make right now. I mean, I understand 2040, we may not all be here, but I get that. But there can be an immediate impact on a small percentage of these dollars that can help some citizens out in the city of Ocoee. Okay.
All right. Well, one of the things, it's my turn, I guess. The 42% is not going just to salaries. That's going for the operation of building that thing, right?
The offset
Offset
funds
cost.
would be
Right,
used.
not just salaries.
Well, and let me be clear, those offset funds would be decided by the city commission in the budget process.
Right.
So if the commission decided to allocate a portion of that 10 million to social programs, they could vote to do so. But that pot was set aside so that we had monies that we could set aside, that we wouldn't have to go through all the red tape of federal compliance on.
All right, here's one of the things. Can you tell me how much money Orange County got?
Offhand, no, I can't.
That is where our social funds come out of, is Orange County, folks. Let's pay attention and look with Orange County. That's where that comes from. The social thing comes out of the county. They have gotten millions upon millions of dollars. And if you look on all the papers and the doors and stores, that's where it's at. It comes out of Orange County for the help. It's just like, I was gonna say something like, we gotta fix one of our bridges. They tell us to fix bridges. Well, we ain't got a bridge. So, but we got things that has to be done in our city. We have all the infrastructure and all the things that need to be done that we don't have to sock it to the citizens. But I'm not gonna sit up here and tell you that I'm gonna pay somebody's business permit out at the mall or somebody's business license somewhere else. I'm not here to do that. There's a lot of people in this city with how many, 400 and something businesses out on Highway 50. We're not set up here to take care of those. But the COVID and all the shots and all the things come through the county department. Did either one of you know what it is?
Well, my colleague just Googled, so Orange County received about $617 million in the state and local relief fund. In addition to that direct funding, I don't know what amount they received in the emergency rental assistance program, but Orange County also has 15 other programs.
Yes.
That range, and they're actually listed in your report, that talk about utilities assistance,
Rent.
career source, Second Harvest Food Bank, meal distribution, United Against Poverty. So there are other programs that the county's operating. In addition to that, there are 9 programs operated by the state. So one of the challenges that we get into, and this comes up quite frequently when we're looking and talking with other cities, is that if you don't have your own housing authority or you don't have your own social services department, you are usually a subset of a larger county
That's right.
organization. And if you implement your own program, you can spend a lot of time and effort to prevent clawbacks of something called duplication of benefits, which often the cost to administer exceeds the benefit that's derived by the community. So one of the reasons we mentioned these other 24 programs, available to Ocoee residents, is because there are programs out there, they're just not being offered through the city.
Well, if you go apply for them, there's rent assistance, there's
Yes.
power bill assistance, there's food assistance. You go through the county, that's where you get it.
Correct.
They're collecting tax dollars from every one of us besides what we're paying to us. And that's what that should be, is coming back, some of it to us. I brought that up before. All of our citizens in this city pay a lot of taxes out to the county. We need to get that money back to some of us. But we're all struggling, but this helps us get to things that really need to be fixed in this city, where we don't have an emergency, where the sewer facilities and water facilities break down. This is where we do repair those things, where we don't have that happen. This is a godsend to get this money, and we need to use it for the purpose. And I will tell you that, I know the city manager knows, and I know Craig knows, I have been up there and talked to him about some of the projects that need to be done in this city. Sidewalks, streets, things like that. This is where this happens at. We can sit up here, and we don't need to take time and have these sidebar meetings and come up with it. We can talk about it, but we have to decide if we're gonna spend that money, let's get started and get it done. Because that's where it's gonna come to. You can apply for the county for social services. Every day I see signs when I go into stores in different buildings. So this is a time for the citizens to take relief off citizens, where we don't have to raise their taxes. We don't have to go after that. We can take this money and fix the things that need to be fixed. You talk about sidewalks all the time in here. You talk about streets all the time. Talk about putting new lights down places we don't have lights. This is the kind of stuff we need to worry about in this city. And all of us need to understand, our water system needs to be protected. We need to make sure that thing is working right. Because if the water thing goes out, our sewer facilities go out, our electrical places, we're all gonna be in trouble. So I don't have a problem with this, and you brought it to us, we get to look at this. That's also why you have a professional staff that works for you. We hire them. They're supposed to be doing this. So that's my comments. I don't have a problem with what's going on. Like I said, I did go up and sit in the office with the city manager, also sit in the office with the assistant city manager, and went over some of the things I thought. And they have brought out on this part about the 10 million, and I keep thinking about that thing, but it's not salaries to me, it's the building, it's the process of that building, process of a fire building, that we don't have to go out and spend $4 or $5 million to get built for our citizens, and they have to pay for it. This is coming out of the money which is all our money anyway. If you get thinking about it, it comes back from the federal government. It should be ours anyway. So we can decide what we want to do, but I have no problem with what we're doing here. So, yes, ma'am.
I was gonna answer, Commissioner Oliver, and I'm just gonna say this, I'm a retired social worker, I'm not an engineer. Okay, we depend on our staff here to tell us what we need and what we need to do within our department. You got 20-year-old equipment. When I read your letter here, as a retired social worker, social services, the county helps with rent, the county helps with utilities, there's federal funds for rent. I used to have to administer those. I pay OCPS taxes. Let them handle the school issues. Let them handle after-school care. We are here to make sure, to be crude, I'm sorry, I want to make sure my residents can flush their toilets and take a shower. Simple as that. Because when they can't, who are they going to call? They're going to be calling utilities to say, my toilet's not flushing. Okay, we know when garbage wasn't picked up, people screamed about garbage. Now, this is our way to get our infrastructure straightened out, and simple as that. And I have engineers that tell us to do that, what we need to do.
Well,
I haven't finished my stuff. And we're going, the money, if we don't do this, we gotta come up with the money to do it. And that's what's gonna happen. If we don't do this, we're gonna have to come up with the money. And I don't want the citizens to have to do that. I want us to be able to take and fix the things in this city that need to be fixed. Listen, the PTA, the school board collects, we got a set of apartments going up on the north side of town. We're sending $3-something million to them, just for these people to build these apartments. $3-something million. That's just that one project, not counting all the other projects these people are gonna build, ones we're talking about tonight. We sent $3 million to them when we did the buildings down here Oasis. And they sent me a letter saying, oh, y'all don't put enough kids in our school thing, so we can't build you another school. But they sure take the money. When we turn it in, they take it. So that money can be used for PTA. These schools have cut back on the programs for these kids where they should be helping them and doing the things they ought to be doing instead of sitting home and doing it on a computer. They ought to be doing it at the school. So go ahead. All right, Mr. Shadrick.
I just wanted to say one thing. We're harping on social services, but we're leaning on the county. We're leaning, putting everything on the county, but we have also a duty and a responsibility toward our citizens. Now, let me clarify what I said. Let me make sure that I'm loud and very clear about what I said. I simply said that a percentage, I didn't say all of it, I didn't say 42% of it, I simply said a percentage should go directly toward impacting our citizens. I understand the high priority of these projects. I get that. And they're gonna happen regardless. So even if we didn't have this conversation about ARPA funds, these projects was on a timeline. They've been on a timeline, and they would happen anyway. But like you said, there's a windfall here. This is an opportunity for us to do something that's gonna be impactful directly to our citizens. And I'm talking about just, when I say social services, it goes beyond rent and utilities. Like, that was just an example. I'm sure we can do matching grants for all kinds of, we have matching grant programs right now, neighborhood matching grant programs that we administer. We don't pay anybody to do that, we do it here. So what's the problem with taking some of those funds and create matching grant programs that would be a direct impact into our communities? Why can't our communities have any impact as to, or say so, as to how we spend this money on their behalf? And I'm talking small percentages.
All right. we've went through it up here, so now, Craig, what do we need to do?
We have a recommendation before you for the proposed list. The appropriate measure, it would be for you to take a vote on it.
I'm fixing to ask the city attorney. Not a public hearing. Without the public hearing at the first public hearing, it's back, is there any way to let them talk? Can't do it.
That was, we've had public comments on agenda items that aren't part of the public hearing.
Consent agenda, not the regular.
Yeah, anything that's not part of a public hearing is, that's the intent of that.
You get to make some comments at the end anyway, so use it for what you want.
But this item was, I'm sorry, Scott, this item was moved from the top of the key, right? So there was no chance to speak about it.
It was moved. It was moved from the consent agenda.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, not the consent agenda, it was moved from the top. It's up, it's up to the commissioners. I'm gonna ask you if you want any of the public to make comments. I'm gonna go with what you up here say.
Can't they make public comments? There's a section at the end to make public comments?
Well, I said you can make it down at the other part. You can make it at the other part, and I'll give you, look, yes,
I'm just gonna say that, these are our residents, this is affecting their daily life. If we move the item from an earlier one to 11, why aren't they
I can
allowed to
make
make
that
a
motion.
comment?
I can do that.
Because we're gonna vote
All right,
for
here's-
them.
all right, here's the
That's
deal.
just my opinion.
Anybody raise their hand that wants to make comments? All right, we'll start, Mr. Moore, come on up, and fill a sheet when you get through. Come on up. All right, I'm gonna give you 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to use 3 minutes. I was a government auditor in a previous lifetime, and the $10 million is a small degree of efficiency in what's known to be an inefficient process. Conceptually, this is not the first time I've seen it. Thank you.
I don't understand what you meant, but
I understand.
The $10 million allowing you to consider it as the salaries for the police and the fire is a small degree of efficiency.
Okay.
In what's known to be an inefficient process.
all right. Gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Don't forget, to fill the form out. Start the clock. Now, this is not on the bottom announcements. This is separate, so you got 3 minutes for this one.
I had a couple of questions, if that, I know Mr. Shadrick's you mentioned the 62 million number, which I believe is from the 5-year CIP. But what is the overlap, or is there an overlap of these capital projects with the 1 year and the 5 year? Is that where they came from, I would assume?
Yes, to answer this gentleman's question, those projects were all on the long-range plan for the departments, and there are many other projects that are not on the recommended list. So the way our capital improvements program works is they're not always funded in the near horizon. And I could go into a lot of detail about the State Growth Management Act reducing the requirement of a financially feasible capital improvements element to the comp plan, but I won't. But we actually put things in our capital improvements plan as things that we know we need to do, and as funding becomes available, we're able to do them. I do want to also address that every project that's on the list affects every citizen and business in Ocoee. Because to the extent, and I don't want to get into a water workshop, but we're subject to rulemaking by the state legislature, and they implemented a new treatment rule for reclaimed water systems. It's going to affect our supply of reclaimed water significantly. our wastewater permits are tied to alternative supplies, which our primary alternative supply is reclaimed water. So we're anticipating some significant increases, and these projects made it on the list because they're going to offset funding that we can use to try to address the alternative supply issue with our reclaim system. And I'm certain that there will be a significant amount of commission meetings in the future addressing that particular issue, because the city hasn't raised water rates in a long time, and I'm quite certain that you guys don't want to raise them anytime soon. So just to tag that on.
All right, so that's it?
One more.
Okay,
But
you got it.
that was my point, is those items go before, I know we see them as a local planning agency, and the commission reviews them, and they're all approved, and they're covered in the budget hearing. And also, not only do we have the $10 million safe harbor, the threshold for those funds, which I believe it was mentioned will go through the budget process later in the year, but that money, that alternative funding for those CIP projects will also free up that funding, which is in the budgeted plan, to be clawed back by us and rediscussed of how to prioritize things in the 5-year plan. And I think also a tax break on the water bill for the citizens is the help that we need. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
I think the gentleman made the same mistake I did. I think we both looked at Orange County, California, at $617 million. Sorry, Brad Lomnick, Veronica Place. Orange County got $270 million, and out of that, they used $135 million came out of that. They used $40 million on social and community services, which directly affect our constituents, right, our residents. But they also put about $14 million into infrastructure projects. It's funny, it's almost about the same exact numbers we are right now in the way less number of money we've gotten. But they also, looking in here, they've taken expenditures as well to have safe harbor funds into their accountability. As I'm looking through their massive 51-page that's on the internet right now. So myself as a resident, I would rather see this money go towards things that will help the entire city, as in more utilities, more sewer management, and the $10 million, that's great. We have a fire department that's not very happy with us in the last couple of years. They've put bad stuff on Facebook about their facilities aren't great. So new firehouse would be wonderful. We see things on Facebook every day about yard waste is just terrible right now. A new claw truck would be amazing. Those are wonderful social services we need, and that's what that $10 million would be taken care of. And when you go through your budget process, if Commissioner Oliver or Commissioner Rosemary wants to say, hey, let's give $10,000 to this group to help make a program, you get to bring that up at that time. But I think to say that, you've had no chance to look at this, they've sent you everything beforehand, you could have emailed people and said, hey, I want this added, but that didn't happen, except for now just to stand on, a soapbox and say, whatever. But that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That's it. All right. Now back to Greg. That's it. You can if you come up. Yes, sir. You got to fill out a form when you get through.
I sure will.
Okay. Name and address.
Alvin Garrett, 2483 Great Birch Drive. I agree with Commissioner Oliver. I've been to a couple of meetings, and I've seen a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of argument. It's just not professional. I've seen these things in these meetings, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's almost like, I'm a district manager. I've been in management, and I've been through timelines. I've been through plans. But we always have organization, and we always have structure. And the thing that concerns me is whenever we have these budgets of this $10 million and where it's going to be allocated, where it's going to go, it confuses me a little bit. It's almost like dipping your hand in a candy jar and pulling out the color. that you want. I understand all the commissioners, I understand the infrastructure, I understand all of that as a citizen. I understand all of it. But I would love for us to come together and look like we have the organization within the city. I would like for that to happen. Instead of just sitting back and seeing our leaders get disgruntled with one another. $10 million is a lot, might not be a lot of money to certain people, but that's a lot of money to Ocoee residents. I get it. Infrastructure needs to be taken care of. We know that. We gotta have a plan. We gotta have the water. We gotta have all the utilities. We gotta have a plan. We can't let this money just all of a sudden go to waste. But I just need the organization from our leaders and not to be disgruntled about certain things. Okay, instead of us getting to a meeting and then we're looking at a candy jar and all of a sudden deciding red is the favorite color today or blue is the favorite color today. Just an analogy. I'm just giving my thoughts.
I will say that arguments or disagreements up here has nothing to do with this issue. We're in the process of trying to decide this money from the thing, and it has nothing to do with what disagreements we all have. I've sat up here a long time, and I've seen a lot of disagreements over the years, but there's a lot of people that have disagreements that end up making votes that's what's better for the city, no matter what the disagreements are. When you get down to when the vote is done, and you vote for it, jump on board and help the city.
Tanya Duriska, 222 106 McGuire Road. I think I'm a little unclear. It seems these programs are great, they're wonderful, they're needed in the city, 100%. We need sidewalks, 100%. I'm tired of walking on the grass, riding my bike in the grass. We need that. We need lights. We need these infrastructural items brought to the city. What is unclear to me is there transparency? It appears from your discussion that certain people are getting information that others aren't getting. And some of you are unclear on this initiative, and some of you are apprised of everything that's going on. And there's no collective understanding about what was brought here today. So if
Go ahead, I'll comment when you get
so
through.
if you guys are not on the same page and unclear, what are we supposed to think? We're coming here to get our information from you and to be guided by you, and it seems that you guys don't have the information to provide to us. So that's just my observation.
Yeah, before you leave, I will tell you that we all of us up here have the same opportunity to get that information. Just like I said earlier, we all have the opportunity to come into this building and get any information we want, okay?
Right, I understand there was opportunity, but was there notification?
Yes, ma'am.
It doesn't appear that way.
Well, it doesn't matter.
It appear-
Okay, I'm not going, we
No,
won't
I'm
keep
not arguing
debating.
with you, I'm
I
just
know.
saying, some individuals are saying they
I know that.
clearly did not receive
Okay.
information that
I
others
know,
received,
but they could have.
but they didn't.
That's not our fault. Okay, I'm not going, that's,
That's
okay,
fine.
that's not our fault, ma'am. They all, ma'am, everybody needs, there's no sense in getting into discussions about stuff when we have one version, just what I just said. Nobody wants to hear it at both sides. Everybody preaches unity, but nobody has unity. That's the bad thing around here. All right, Craig, let's finish this up.
I'm here to answer any further questions,
I'm here.
and we have a staff
We need a vote.
recommendation.
We need a vote.
Yeah, we need to vote to approve the proposed project list per staff recommendation or whatever modifications the city commission desires as part of that motion.
All right, and then, so what I need is a motion.
I'll make a motion for approval of the, what is it called?
Project list?
The ARPA project list.
I'll second that.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Brinson and seconded by Commissioner Wilson, but with also, can we put, what the discussion part is where we, if we still come up with comments to be made, we can still make the comments back to them in that process, right, Craig?
Mayor, the next opportunity you're going to have for the $10 million that's freed up, you're going to have a recommendation, and as the budget process comes up, you'll all have the opportunity at that point to decide exactly how that $10 million will be spent. So, yeah, I mean, this isn't the end of it. We're recommending the fire station and
Okay,
the
all
shooting
right.
range. You all still have to approve that. There's that
All right.
$10 million there that you all get to decide how it's used in next
All
year's
right.
budget.
I'm going to recognize Commissioner Brinson's motion to go with the recommendation of the staff, right, Commissioner? Yeah. Yes. All right, and I got a second from Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Any more discussion? If not, let's vote. Motion carries 4-1. Thank you for presentation. Thank you. All right, so that, now we're down to comments from citizens. Now, this is for nothing about what we just did. So anybody oops. You start off again, Mr. Morris. Remember the 3 minutes.
The dragon clock, yes, sir.
You remember the service, everything was timed.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, man. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I'm Jim Moyer. I live in Arden Park North, and I believe we started off the wrong place here, but anyway, I want to try to present the big picture a little bit from the 2020 census in regard to race and ethnicity. And the United States is the, excuse me, third most populated country in the world behind China and India. They're both in Asia. Florida is the third most populated state in the United States, very far behind California and Texas. Florida has grown people have moved to Florida more so than any other state, and also added immigrations more than any other state. We're growing, that's the bottom line. And Orange County is the fifth, not the third, most populated in Florida behind Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach on southeast Florida, and Hillsborough over on the west coast. Orange County has had an increase about 25% in the last decade, which is much larger than any other of the top 5 most populated counties in Florida. Orange County Diversity Index is 71.3, the second highest in Florida behind Broward County, 71.8. The percent of Orange County Hispanic population is 5th largest county behind Miami, which in the southeast, Hendry, Osceola, our neighbor, and Hardy. Hendry and Hardy are what they call micro metropolis, meaning they actually have less people than Ocoee does, and their counties. As you can see, I don't have much time here. Ocoee and Orange County have more Hispanics than the country as a whole. And as far as Asians, we have about twice as many Asians here in Ocoee and Orange County as they do in the state of Florida, about equal to that of the United States. I've emailed a copy of the presentation to all the commissioners. It's much more in depth. If you have time, please take a look at it. Thank you for your time, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. All right, raise it. Go down the line.
That was nice, Mr. Moore, thank you. I think we don't take enough time here to celebrate and enjoy and recognize the diversity and the richness that we do have frequently. And Mr. Moore is always leading that, thank you. I wonder tonight if we're talking about strife. You know, there's a town tonight where the mayor is telling his residents to keep calm and make Molotov cocktails as they fight for democracy, they fight for their lives, and they fight communists, real ones. You know, the Fabian socialists in America and Europe long ago decided that there would not be a violent confrontation, students of history. But they are seeking to undermine the pinnings of our freedom and our liberty. We talk a lot, we give face time to the comments. Those that don't understand history are doomed to repeat it. We talk about teaching more history, more civics, more economics, but we don't do it. We have to. There's a fight in our country for our culture, for our values in our city, here in this hall. We see it. We see the strife. We see the arguments. We don't always understand what's really going on underneath the scenes. The candy jar, gentleman spoke about the candy jar. All of these federal funds are a candy jar, and people just want more sugar. I want my taxes back. I'd like to see the city take some of that money that gets back into the budget, and as they did at the last budget hearing, use that money to keep the millage or to put it down or lower the increase. That tax burden is just siphoning freedom and innovation and entrepreneurship and businesses in our city. Again, we talk about it, we say we support it. The best way for us to support women and minority-owned businesses is to create a stable, low-tax environment for business, low-regulation environment for business in our town, and let those of us that are volunteering in different areas of planning and zoning and HRDB, et cetera, let us do those good works that support those small, mentor those small business people, et cetera. That's not the role for this commission. You know, there's a thing called vocational certainty. Do you have the skills, the education, the experience that align with your vision and with your calling? I don't know where in the city government people go to get mentoring on small business. I don't know that we have a small business administration that is set up to teach and train and guide those people. That's just not what we're supposed to be doing here. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
All right. I have two things. Brad Lomnick, Veronica Place. First off, it's a procedural question I'd like to ask the clerk. Madam Clerk, when does packets go out to the commissioners for the commission meeting?
It's typically the week before.
So a week's in advance notice of what's going to happen in the commission meeting.
Correct. We put it online for the residents, and then we email it out to all the elected officials.
Great. And when was GSG's report sent out to the commissioners before tonight's meeting?
Last week.
I'm sorry?
It was emailed last week. with
Okay,
a
so
packet.
they've also had that for a week. Has any commissioner had any notes or comments about GSG's proposal or tonight's comments to you? And I also ask you as well, Mr. Frank, have you gotten any comments from any commissioners about this?
Yes, I have.
Okay, were those answered beforehand? Were those questions answered beforehand in a timely manner? Perfect, thank you. My next thing is the trash is starting to get more commented again. You know, I think we're doing way better on the trash can part of our trash picking up business. There was a resident that had, I can't remember the number of bags now.
12.
They had 12 bags out front. I believe our code and statute says we'll pick up 40 cubic yards or 10 bags.
Yeah.
And instead of picking up the 10 bags, they left all 12. I had a wood shelf that was in my garage that I took apart. I put it out on the curb nice and neatly. I made it sure it was under 4 feet in length and that it was not, anything like that. I had a note saying it was construction material and it was not picked up. I had to call utilities. I had to have a supervisor come out and have a 20-minute debate about what construction materials are and what a shelf in my garage is. So, if we do have extra funds, sure would love our own claw truck back. That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Jason Mellon, 2137 New Victor Road, and Brad stole part of my thunder with the trash truck issue. I don't know about a lot of residents, but my trash bin looks like it lost a crash 'em up derby. I mean, there's so many holes in it, and I can't get it replaced. The yard waste pickup, I mean, the city is beautiful. All the roads are beautiful. The palm trees, everything's mowed and manicured. You drive through the neighborhoods around here, and there's piles of trash and yard waste because people will not stop and pick it up, and it sits there for weeks. You get a letter or a little note, and I went out there and I kicked my palm tree. I moved it 3 inches. They picked it up next time, so there's no rhyme or reason to what the trash pickup, how they operate. I have no idea. Second issue, I don't know what's going on with the junkyard that is now opened up in front of Ocoee Taco. I'm hoping that the city will look into that and rectify this big fence with black netting around it and junk cars, sitting in the back. I don't know if that was what was discussed a month or two ago, but it's getting to be an eyesore. And then lastly, I know I brought up political signs last time. I think we all know now, or should know, Ocoee does have an ordinance already that discusses political signs, and every single one that is up right now, as far as I can tell, are illegal. They're all too big. The ones that are too big, I doubt they went to the city and asked for a permit for them. They're too close together, and obviously most of them were put up a year before the election. And I know the P&Z is going to be looking at it, and this will be something coming up, but we don't need to wait to take these signs down. They're already there. They're illegally placed, and some of them are also in Orange County. They're all illegal in Orange County. So, and I've already talked to the commission there, and they're going to be working on sending their road crews out to remove the illegal signage. And hopefully the city can kind of jump the gun and remove some of these trashy eyesores that are plaguing like literally every city block. So, and that's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. I will say that if you pull up section 31-5, 141, you can understand what political signs means about what the rules are and not rules. There are a bunch of illegal signs in the city. So our code enforcement or whoever needs to go after it, do that and take care of those signs, whether it be mine or yours or who. If it's not legal, it don't need to be there. And all right. That's all public comments. All right, we'll start. Tonight I'll start with Commissioner Oliver.
First, I want to thank all the folks that had comments at the end of the meeting. Thank you for your comments. Some I agree, some I did disagree. But one thing I will say about the ARPA funds is I sat here and listened to the same presentation that everyone listened to. They gave a very eloquent presentation, and there was also follow-up from our assistant city manager in addition to that presentation. And we talked about 10 million, and we talked about the losses of funds and how they're going to use that 10 million, right? We talked about that and how it frees up money. But one thing I didn't hear say, well, we can buy the clock truck, we can do this, we can do all these different things. We talked about all these different line items. It wasn't until I brought up social services, then all of a sudden there was a magical formula that came up that now we can take the 10 million and we use it for this, 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 and this. That wasn't a part of the presentation that I heard. So I was concerned during that presentation as to, okay, we got all this money, but I don't see anything going towards social services. That was my concern. But now we're talking about cloud trucks and yard waste and different things like that, and a fire station, which we desperately need a new fire station. But it wasn't a part of that presentation. It was not a part of that presentation. So had I not brought that up, it never would have got mentioned. we would have moved on and voted and kept going. So therefore, again, we have to be mindful of what we're listening to, ask the right questions to get the answers that we need when it comes to impact to our citizens, right? So, one thing I was hoping that we would do during this commission meeting, I was hoping that we would have a proclamation for Women's History Month. Today starts Women's History Month, and I did not see a proclamation. But since we don't have a proclamation, I will read some information about women's history. Women's History Month, each year, March is designated Women's History Month by presidential proclamation. The month is set aside to honor women's contribution in American history. Did you know that Women's History Month started as Women's History Week? Women's History Month began as a local celebration in Santa Rosa, California. The Education Task Force of the Sonoma County, California Commission on the status of women planned and executed. They executed a Women's History Week. It was celebrated in 1978. The organizers selected the week of March 8th to correspond with International Women's Day. The movement spread across the country as other communities initiated their own Women's History Week, celebrating the following year. In 1980, a consortium of women's groups and historians led by the National Women's History Project, now known as the National Women's History Alliance, successfully lobbied for national recognition. In February 1980, President Jimmy Carter issued the first presidential proclamation declaring the week of March 8th, 1980 as National Women's History Week. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Forster.
Everybody's leaving. Was I that bad? As far as the presentation goes, what was presented as far as what I heard were the prioritized projects from staff that have been on the books, have been on our long-range plan now for quite some time. They have the opportunity to address some of those things now, and they made their recommendations, and that's what we paid them for. They're professional staff, and if you ask me which one's better than the other or what should be where, I couldn't tell you. That's not my business. But anyway, the $10 million is discretionary money, and that'll be discussed in the annual budget. And we'll all have the opportunity to present everything. And I agree with Commissioner Oliver that social services should be part of that. We should identify what we can do, but we should also identify the things that would duplicate other services that Orange County or the state of Florida provide already. We seem like we have a lot of problems, but if you've been paying attention to the world news lately, we're in big trouble, folks. Pray for the Ukraine. They're being abused terribly over there right now, and we're on a very dangerous precipice when world leaders start talking about nuclear deterrence. Pray to whoever you pray to that these people come to their senses, because we can't have this escalate beyond control, because the whole world is looking at it and they're all getting in line to figure out how they're going to mix in with this. Russia, China, Iran. It's truly a global conflict out there that's about ready to erupt, and none of us need that. That's all I have to say.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes. Some of you may not realize, I know that when we're up here, we may, we disagree, which we have the ability to. But we're bound by something called the Sunshine Law. And this is our only opportunity to talk. Unless we had a workshop that was noticed, which means you can come to it, which I love that. But this is our only opportunity to talk to each other. So when we start disagreeing with each other, that's fine, because this is the place where we're supposed to do it, in front of you, okay? So I just wanna make sure folks understand that. If we talked outside of here, we would be going to ethics, and that's the last thing I wanna do. And so, just to let you know, we never should have discussion with, our discussion outside of here should be, how's the weather? You wanna talk about the family, talk about the family, but nothing that we're gonna talk to you about or make a decision. So I need you to understand that, first of all. Second of all, I know it's gonna lead from the last subject also. We have, when the agenda comes out, it comes out usually on a Thursday, it's the week before. We read it. We have the opportunity to call the city manager, the assistant city manager, or the department heads to find out what is entailed in that item. Yes, you put us here to make those decisions, for us to do the research. I probably talk to the city manager twice a week. Rob, would you say that's about right? 3 times a week, okay. It's probably more, but we won't go there, okay? Because I read the agenda, I wanna get the answers. Because if you read the agenda, I wanna have an answer for you. So when you call me, I have residents who call me, but I'll tell you, this thing does not blow up. I'd love to hear from a lot of you. Don't say blow up. Don't say blow up, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I'm being corrected here, okay. It's there to call me. My number's listed. You have a question, please call me. Let me try to find the answer out for you if I don't know the answer. Next thing, okay, now I'll go get off of that, to, coming up on March 26th, the police department will be having a shred event hosted by the City of Ocoee Police Department. It'll be over at the police department on Saturday morning, the 26th, from 9 to 11:30. The object is to get your documents shredded. We have our own shredders, but sometimes we have a lot more documents that we want to go ahead and get rid of. It's a safe way to do it. The Ocoee Women's Club and the Ocoee Lions Club are 2 of the clubs that will be there working on this. I'm a member of both of them, so let me say that right out. But it's a fundraiser also for the Women's Club and the Ocoee Lions Club. The first box is complimentary. We do ask for a donation of $5 for each additional box. If you're a business and you want to get rid of a lot of documents, you need to get a hold of us, because we only have so much space in the truck. But we would love you to come and shred your documents. March 26th, come see us at the police department. It's very quick. You drive through, we take the things out of your car or truck, we dispose of them. They're shredded in front of you. If you want to watch it, you can, and you can move on. So again, it's a very quick process. 9 o'clock to 11:30. We'd love to see you come to that.
Credit cards,
I'm sorry?
shred credit cards.
You know, I guess that machine will take most.
No.
I think the machine will take a lot of things, but try to keep the metal. The what? It takes staples, yeah. So, but please, come see us, okay? It's a great way to protect your identity. I think that's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Retz?
All right, I'm probably gonna be all over the place. Because, I've heard a lot tonight. And part of what I heard makes sense, part of what I heard does not make sense. I'm gonna start with the commission. We are duly elected members of this commission. And our role is to push back when we think we need to push back, regardless of what the public thinks. That's what we've been elected to do, is help run the city. Anyone who's been in business, anyone who's been in a boardroom, anyone who's been in a conversation, even if the conversation is just with one other person, will have disagreements. When we see items on Thursday, when we get our agenda, and we have until Tuesday evening to do all the work, to research, to read, to reach out, to communicate, to get feedback, to circle back with them about that feedback, and then be prepared for this meeting so we can address those matters, that's a heavy lift, because most of us, we don't have the luxury of being retired, most of us. I rolled my eyes if you didn't see that. But that's a heavy lift for us, because sometimes our agenda can be hundreds of pages. And I'm one of those people, and I'm not an engineer. People have told me I have an engineering mind, because I read the agenda from page 1 to page whatever. And I communicate with the city staff, and the city staff will tell you, I will communicate, and I ask tough questions. So oftentimes the question I ask when I'm asking someone who's at the podium or someone who's giving a presentation is not because I don't know the answer. I've already received the answer. I'm doing it because I want to make sure that the public knows that we're trying to ask questions that they are thinking. And it's important for that to happen. And so I want to make sure that people are clear that I can't speak for anyone else, but this commissioner sits in this seat. I do the work, and it is the work that needs to be done. My job is not to rubber stamp, and I've said this many times from this dais, the city staff. No matter how good they are, I will not rubber stamp their recommendations. And anyone who does needs to leave the commission, because that's not what you're hired to do. Your job interview got you elected. And once we got elected, our job is to do the job. And I've said this before, one of our main responsibilities as elected officials is public safety. It's the safety of the public. And the other part is to try to run this municipality, not just for today, but also for tomorrow, to see what's over the horizon and be prepared for that when it's coming. We have new city halls coming out, and I'm asking tough questions about our new buildings that's coming up. Why? Because I'm trying to not have the same conversation about a new city hall 15 years from now. I don't want to have it. I want to be prepared today. And that's important. And so when I hear people come in the public and saying and asking and accusing or literally questioning us, I have no problem with that whatsoever, because that means that you're listening, you're paying attention. Even if you don't have all the information, you have enough to form a question or an opinion to come and ask us. So keep doing that. Keep coming and asking the questions. But don't believe that the members of this commission are not doing the work. Don't believe that. Some members may not communicate with the city staff as much as others, but we are communicating. I know I am, and I have evidence of my communication. But the reason we're here is to run the city of Ocoee, and it's not an easy task, because we go from social programs all the way to busted sewer pipes to how do we get our students in more seats instead of inside of the school proper, instead of in a portable outside the back of the school. How do we fight that battle? That's part of our responsibility. So we need to understand what it is that we're doing, but I want to make sure that the public understands that we're here if we're going to fight up here, you want to see people fighting. Look at Parliament in England. Have you ever seen them? It's almost comical the way but they get the work done. They get the work done. So I'm going to try to get off that soapbox. I may circle back, so beware, be mindful. Let me talk about Orange County. This week alone, in fact, last week and this week, I had to contact Orange County on 3 different occasions for citizens in the city of Ocoee. And I contacted them, and there's a program called the EHEAP program. There's an office called the Office of Aging for Orange County. There's an office called the Neighborhood Center for Families in Orange County, Healthy West Orange, the United Way, all these companies or these agencies I had conversations with either late last week or early this week. Why? Because our citizens contacted me and said, hey, I need help with rent, I need help because I had an unexpected bill or something happened, their financial situation changed. And so we have programs in Orange County that are available. But we as a commission need to understand what those programs are. We need to be able to empower our citizenry on how to access those programs. And so that's important. And maybe it's a matter of us having something in the city that someone in the city is actually smart on all those programs, so when they call, we can point them to that office, and that office can act as a conduit to those other programs at the city and or at the state. So that's important. What is best for the city? I think information flow is important. I think when we start getting bogged down on information and we don't share the information freely, we start making decisions either in a vacuum or semi-vacuum. That's problematic, because as Commissioner Wilson has said, and I just have a problem with, one of the things Commissioner Wilson said is the Sunshine Law ties our hands. It ties our hands. We cannot communicate with one another outside of this commission meeting unless we're in a properly noticed meeting and it's open to the public and minutes are taken and all this other stuff. So sometimes when we get it, I can't wait to get here to have this conversation. I can't wait, because I'm not throwing darts, but I'm gonna ask some tough questions. And the reason why is because I want to make sure that the public knows that I've done the work, I put in the work, and now I'm asking questions that I think the public will know. The public wants to know, you spending 42% of this money to salaries? But I understood what the answer was, but I need the public to understand what the answer is. So I asked the question so they can explain it, and that's important. There's a gentleman here, I don't know, I think he left, he's talking, trash can. Gotta call Public Works on those trash cans. And I say that because this is a pet peeve of mine. If that truck drops your trash can and the wheel comes off, that driver needs to replace that wheel. If that driver pokes holes in your trash can, that trash can needs to be replaced. Because it's also an eyesore. Even just sitting aside the road, it's also an eyesore. Brad, I can't help you with your cabinet, buddy. Well, it's a pile of wood now, but I can't help you with it. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know what to do about that. But it's important to know that the city is moving forward. We have a lot of growth. Be mindful. I know every time I speak about speeding. I was at Sam's Club yesterday, and I was just turning in to get gasoline, and a truck came out of control, small SUV, and hit probably 7 cars. I mean, and it was in the Sam's Club parking lot, and it crashed into all these cars, hit a few people who were walking with their groceries. It was a horrible, 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 tragic, and I witnessed the whole thing, just like I was watching TV through my windshield. This person got out of control, and once the car got out of control, because they were doing whatever it was doing, they lost control. And now people's cars are totaled, people are injured, hopefully there was no fatalities. However, speed kills. It kills. We have got to slow down on our streets. And we have to be mindful that if someone is stopped in front of us, there may be a reason they're stopped in front of us. Don't go flying around them, because you may end up crashing into someone you didn't expect to crash into. Commissioner Oliver kind of mentioned this, but I definitely want to make mention that today is the first day of Women's History Month. That's important. From suffrage to the workplace to the boardroom, women, I take my hat off to you. You've come a long way. It wasn't easy. Believe me, I know. So keep doing what you're doing, and hopefully one day here in America we'll close that salary gap. Last thing I have is I want to give a shout out, if I may, to Haley Smith. She's from Maxey Elementary School, and she was the grand prize winner of the Black History Month essay, and she got her award for that, and reward, I guess you could say. It's $400.
We'll try to bring her up here at the next meeting.
Oh, okay. You see, that's even better. That's all I have, sir.
Thanks, sir. For garbage cans, garbage, trash. I brought it up at the budget process about, us seeing about buying our own claw truck, take it off that contract, deal with them people and take it off. I've got 25 bags of leaves sitting in my house, but I separated them. I just did that. I didn't do it. I hired somebody to do it. I can't do that. I can't do that no more. But I got 25 bags beside the 10 bags. I set 10 out there. I said, do not put the rest of them out there, because they won't pick them up. But I do not understand when you put 12 out there, why not you, instead of leaving a notice, you can only pick 10 up, you don't pick any of them. That's kind of crazy. But I still believe the garbage is great, they do a great job with the garbage, it's just this yard waste that everybody got used to it in the town, because we picked up everything. So, I would ask if we can look at, and you cannot buy that, I don't believe, where'd Craig go? Rob? I don't think you can buy the claw truck out of that money.
We will have $10 million
Yeah.
to spend towards anything that you all decide. The other,
We'll bring that
original 10 million will displace
All right.
10 million we
Maybe
would have to pay in
Maybe we
salaries.
bring that up. I think if we bought our own plow truck, if it did nothing else but go out for that, that's a big thing, because people, there's people that, I don't know where they're getting all this stuff. I ride around town all day long, everywhere. There is a lot of stuff out there. April the 8th and 9th is our Ocoee Music Fest. Vanilla Ice is on Friday night, Saturday night's country. So Friday night's a different genre, and then Saturday night we got country. So it's April the 8th and 9th down here at City Park. Disagreements. I've been sitting up here a long time, and I can remember back, Lester Dabbs was the mayor, and Lester was my school teacher in high school, and he was a great guy, one of the best teachers you ever would have. And him and I discussed stuff and argued over stuff. But listen, when it's over with, I don't care. You vote the way you want to vote. I vote the way I think I ought to vote for citizens, and there shouldn't be no hard feelings about it. There is nobody up here except one person that him and I argue. We all know that. The rest of them I don't have no arguments with. But I'm not going to get blamed for something because it keeps coming up. Folks, I'm here to do what the citizens of Ocoee, and I keep saying this is what I'm doing. And you want to come get my phone and look at it, see how many people I talk to every day, I'd be glad to give you a copy of the list. And they aren't calling me to say, hey, you're arguing. They're calling me to say, hey, can you come get my garbage picked up? Or can you come see what's wrong with my water meter? That's what I'm supposed to be doing, and that's what I do. And I'm going to keep trying to do that. But I'm not up here to disagree and hate anybody. And I keep saying, everybody tells me unity, but unity seems to only go to one way. So the unity means that's together. So just like I brought it up at the last meeting, I'm going to tell you again, this park we're putting in over here on Franklin Street, I want to see us name that Unity Park. And we can do things in there and make that where it's at for people to come see things and see what our city has become and what it will be with what we do with people. And if you know Ocoee, then you'll know that's what we need to do. And that's where we got to work at making that happen. And I see the sidewalk is in up at Worst Road, Commissioner. The sidewalk.
Oh, yes, the crosswalk.
Crosswalk.
I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, that's up. That's something we needed to have done. Woo-hoo. And, but that's, the problem with us and ours, we have to call the city manager. And like I said, I don't know what everybody else, I am retired, but I spend more time gone from my house than I do at home when I was working. So I leave the house about 8 or 8:30 in the morning, and I don't come home till late in the afternoon, because I do go around town. And Rob probably hates seeing me come in that office sometimes, and I know Melody probably does, and Sherry and Craig. I bug them to death, and I call them all the time on weekends. And our police chief, bless her soul, she answers that telephone. When I call her, she answers. So I will say, they did catch somebody speeding up on Adair that was doing 60 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone. So you don't think they're not speeding, they are. So what I will say is, I think we try to explain things, but the disagreement of not hearing what we're all saying is everybody has a different opinion, but it all comes down to, I'm not upset because Commissioner Oliver voted no on that project a while ago. I felt like voting yes. So everybody has their own vote. That's what you've up here elected to do. And we're all trying to do that. So I just want everybody to understand that we're here to do, and Commissioner Brinson said it, we're here to do what citizens want us to do. So I will do one thing, and if anybody comes here that's running for the state office or any of the offices, I will recognize you. And I will say it. If you want to get up and make your name known, I think you're running for something, sir. If you want to get up and just come say your name and all and say hello, tell them who you are and what you're running for. Because if you come here, I'll look at you and tell you.
My name is Peter Weed. I'm in Orlando, and I'm running for 10th District Congressman.
For what?
Congress, 10th District.
Okay. All right. Thanks, sir.
Which we're in the 10th District.
All right. We appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.
Anybody that comes, we'll call them up if they tell me. All right. Like I said, check on that claw truck, Rob. I think we might have to deal with the contract, but I think we can do that. Is our music fest, when is the other downtown one? Anybody know? Anybody know when? There's one downtown here, it's gonna be downtown, not at the lake, it's gonna be downtown.
You're talking about March 17th?
March 17th, I think they did, yeah.
You're talking about the
Yeah.
St. Patrick's Day
Yeah, St. Patrick's Day, yes. They're gonna have a few people doing some of the St.
on
Patrick's Day.
McKee Street.
All right, I wanna thank everybody,
on the
thanks for
18th?
your,
It's on the 18th? I put it down for the 17th.
I wanna thank everybody, thanks for your attention, thanks for the, citizens for coming out, we appreciate it, and we'll meet, we don't have a meeting the 15th. We don't meet again till the 1st of April.
So that's, the 18th is the, I'll change my calendar.
First, somewhere, let's see, April the 4th, no, 5th, April the 5th. Thank you.